Hey everyone, Tyler here. Today I want to talk about some of the lenses and adapters that I use on the red Komodo-X and Komodo for that matter. Now, obviously, if a project calls for a specific set of lenses that I don't have, I will rent those, but I'm just kind of talking about like the lenses that are in my kit and the lenses that I go for the most often for the Komodo-X. So if that interests you, then let's hang out and nerd out about some lenses and adapters. So the Komodo-X and the Komodo have an RF mount here. I typically use either EF or PL lenses. So I've got a handful of adapters here that I'll go ahead and cover. First up, we'll just go over the PL adapter. This is a Metabones adapter. There are other brands out there, but I've used Metabones adapters since like the OG pocket cinema camera days, and I've always just been really happy with the quality of Metabones. So nothing special about this one. It doesn't have any electrical contacts or anything. It's just a standard PL adapter. Moving on, the rest are EF adapters, and that's typically the type of lens that I'll run on the Komodo or Komodo-X. Starting off, let's just go ahead with the first adapter, and this is the kind of the standard pass-through adapter, if you will, meaning it doesn't have any filters or lens elements or anything. This is just a straight pass-through adapter, but this one is made by Metabones, and I prefer to use this one over the Canon one because it has this locking ring here, so it kind of acts like a PL lens almost. It's a locking EF mount. Super awesome to have that. It kind of mounts similarly to how you would mount a PL lens, so you mount it as it would kind of be already ready on the body, then you twist this and lock it on. And with the Komodo-X having the locking ring as well, once you lock that, it's just a super solid connection. Next up, I have the Canon drop-in RF mount EF adapter, and in that I'm running the Breakthrough X4 VND adapter. This filter is pretty good. It's not, it's not gonna win any awards, but the reason why I prefer this over the Canon one is because the Canon one, at the very end of the, whatever, the 9 stops or whatever it is, it basically is useless. It's like basically a day for night filter at that point because it just turns everything blue. This one doesn't have that crazy shift at the end, so it's nice. And the ring here, the little dial, is just a little bit more dampened and a little bit more solid, so it doesn't move. The Canon one is super loose and could easily get bumped. This thing doesn't move so easily, so that's really nice. And then lastly is the Canon focal reducer. This is really great because it widens your field of view and lets in more light, and typically why I would use this is simply just to get a wider field of view with the 16 to 35 here that I have, and I'll talk about here in a second. The only complaint though I have is that it actually rubs on the Komodo-X's, the internal, I don't even know what you call it, but this part right here, you can see there's like a little ring, and that is from the rear element on the speed booster. If you don't want to have that happen, then don't get this adapter. And I'm actually considered getting the Metabones speed booster Cine adapter. As I understand it, it doesn't actually rub the internal felt lining here or whatever this is, and I think it works good. I've heard that it's just recently got an update for Komodo-X support, so I think autofocus and all that works good. So that is it on adapters. So let's move on to lenses, and we'll go ahead and start with the Sigma 24-70 Art 2.8 IS lens. This lens is an absolute tank. If I could only have one lens with me in my kit, then I would just run this lens. This is a fantastic lens. It's got optical stabilization, it's decently sharp, and it's got a really good focal range. So with the standard adapter, which is typically how I run it, it's got a great range. If you run with the speed booster, then obviously you get a wider field of view there, which is really nice. But this lens, I've shot so many projects on this lens, and typically if I'm shooting a project and I have this lens with me, 90% of the time this lens just stays attached to the camera just because of how versatile it is. The only problem with this lens is the focus is swapped with most lenses, where you would think the focus would be this gear, but it's this tiny little gear. So that's really the only complaint I have about this lens. I guess also it's just a super heavy lens, so that's something to also consider. But This is like my ride or die lens. I absolutely love this lens. Moving on, my next favorite lens is the 18-35. This lens at this point is honestly just like a requirement for anybody with Super 35 sensors. This is just an incredible lens. It's basically having multiple primes in one lens. It's super sharp, f1.8 all the way through the zoom range, and yeah, it's just an amazing lens. I've got this little focus gear here on there, so if I'm using like a follow focus or something, I'm able to run it like that. So this is just an incredible lens. It's so sharp, it's so good for like really clinical shots, product stuff and all that. So yeah, really like this lens. I'm gonna skip over this lens for now. I'm gonna stick with the EF lenses and hop over to the 16-35. This is the f4 version of the 16-35. And the reason why I like this is, number one, it's lightweight, and the other reason is it has built-in image stabilization, so it's really nice for if you're doing handheld stuff to kind of get rid of those micro jitters. And my primary use of this lens is usually in combination with the focal reducer, just to get a really wide field of view if I need for like an interior shot or whatever I'm trying to go for. But with the standard adapter with the crop factor, it kind of effectively gives you like a 22 to 50-ish range, which is a fine standard range for the Komodo-X. And this being so lightweight, it's really nice to kind of have as like a walkabout lens if you're walking around town and you strip all this down just to use your phone to monitor. This is a great little lens, and yeah, super lightweight. It's weather sealed when you have a filter on the front, and it's super sharp, so this is a great option to have. Next up, 7200. This is also the f4 version. I like the f4 version typically over the f2.8 version just because it's much smaller and lighter weight. This is a really old lens. This is the IS version, but this is the version 1. I think they have a second version of this lens, but I've seen really no real need to upgrade from this lens. It's still a decently sharp lens. So those are all my spherical EF lenses. The only RF lens really that I use with the Komodo or Komodo-X is this 16mm prime. And the only reason why I would use this is if I'm doing like a hard mount or something like that, and just trying to keep the camera package as small and lightweight as possible. That's really the only reason I would use this lens. Otherwise, I just don't like using RF glass on the Komodo or Komodo-X because they're all focused by wire, so you can't get any consistent focus marks or anything like that. So that's why you really don't see any other RF lenses here. I have a couple of RF lenses that I use with the R5, which are great on that camera, but on the Red cameras, focused by wire, it's just absolutely useless. So I really don't like using any RF lenses other than this one on the Red cameras. Now, moving on, I have two anamorphic lenses that I absolutely love using on the Komodo-X. This is the Nanomorph Zoom. This is the 28-55. They also have a 50-100, but for some reason I just always reach for the 28-55. It's just a personal preference thing, but I just love like the wider angle focal lengths of anamorphic. I just think it's super fun and a unique look. Yeah, but this is an awesome lens. I pretty much keep a black Pro Mist 1/8 in front of it, and because these lenses are pretty sharp, especially for anamorphic lenses, and the Pro Mist just kind of helps balance that out a little bit. And having an anamorphic zoom is incredible. This is the Silver Flare edition, which I typically prefer the Silver Flare over the amber or blue, just because it kind of takes on the color characteristics of the light source. And then this is another Laowa lens. This is the Nanomorph Prime, and these are awesome just to have for like keeping a super small and lightweight camera package. This is the PL version, and I typically prefer PL or EF over the mirrorless mounts. Even though the mirrorless mounts are a little bit smaller, I just prefer the PL mount just because it's just a more versatile, and you can use this on more camera bodies. So I just prefer to not be locked into a mirrorless mount if I don't have to be. And again, this is the Silver Flare edition. I just prefer the neutral flaring of the Nanomorphs as opposed to the other ones. So that is pretty much it. Like I said, this is like my main lens kit. There are other lenses that I have that I'll use on a special occasion, like the Zhongyi Optics, like their T10 cinema primes. They're great lenses. They're really sharp, but I don't find that I reach for those as often just because I have lenses I feel feel like that can cover what those lenses do for the most part. The only reason I'd reach for those if I'm shooting in a super low light situation where I just need to have that T1.0 aperture, or if I'm trying to get a special kind of look, then I'll reach for those lenses. But for the majority of my projects, this lens kit right here can pretty much cover all of my needs. So yeah, that's pretty much it that I have for this video. Hope you found it helpful or useful. If you have any questions, let me know down in the comments below, and I hope to see you in the next video. Peace.